hi everybody, and those of you who are still popping on, thanks for joining us once again for Let's Talk Art. I'm Sarah Hall, the director of the Washington County Museum of Fine Arts. For those of you who are on Zoom and might need a Zoom refresher, we do this as a webinar. So, and we approach these programs as conversations back and forth. So I actually encourage people to put questions in the chat or raise your hands and go ahead and interrupt us, because we'll get to you as soon as we can, and that just makes it more interesting. You can also adjust your screen view at top right between gallery or speaker view. Gallery view will show you both of us. The speaker view will just show you which one of us is speaking. Interestingly enough, or literally enough. Tonight, we're talking about the exhibition Floating Beauty, Women in the Art of Ukiyo-e. And I want to mention here at the outset that the majority of the exhibition is from the Reading Public Museum, curated by Scott Schweigert. The installation in Hagerstown was curated by Daniel Fulco, and the installation design is by Sarah Wolf, our manager of collections and exhibitions. And we received generous funding support for this exhibition from Dr. Robert and Marjorie Hobbs. They are great friends of the museum. Thank you both. And I also need to give one commercial before we get started, which is that the museum's really, I think it's our biggest fundraiser of the year. The treasure sale starts next week. So Friday night, November 1st at 5 o'clock is our preview party. It is $50 if you're not a member of the museum, $45 if you are. What that gets you is good company and nice snacks, but also the opportunity to snag things faster. You get first purchase option. Otherwise, you can come in on Saturday and Sunday when we are free and open to the public. Our famous bag sale, we provide the bags, and many of the items are discounted so that you get a bag for $25. And then on Tuesday, Monday we're closed. Tuesday we continue with a $15 bag sale. It's lots of fun. My pasta machine, which I will admit, like so many people, I haven't used. I've made a lot of pasta, but I've never gotten the pasta machine out. But I got it at the treasure sale, and a lot of the art in my apartment is from the treasure sale as well. So it's a lot of fun. So tonight, I will say that it is a bit unusual. After 4 years of partnering on Let's Talk Art with Daniel Fulco, he has moved on to new adventures. So I invited Paulette Lee to join me tonight for a conversation, because I often bump into Paulette at the museum when she's giving tours and interacting with people. And I know she likes this show, and I thought we would just be a good pair. So I don't know if you want to say anything to introduce yourself, Paulette.
Yes, that I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to this. I think we will have a good conversation, and I'm looking forward to what other people have to offer as well.
So I am going to open my screen share, which is all the way in the wrong place here. Let's see, slideshow from start. And we can just get talking. And like I said, this is meant to be a conversation. So, please do ask questions if you have them while we go along. We always like to start these by sort of setting the stage and showing you what our exhibition looks like, as in case you haven't been, and hopefully it will encourage you to come. And this is the opening as you walk in. And first of all, Paulette, if you're giving a tour, how do you start out when you're taking people in?
Thank you. I was just taking a sip of wine, and I thought you were going to say, Paulette, how do you drink wine while you're doing one of these?
We like wine whenever we can have it.
That's right. That's right. I usually start actually out in the lobby, and I give an introduction to the museum. I ask people if they've been here before. I tell them a little bit about the museum, and I give them some background to the exhibit so that they can know a little bit about what to expect. This one is particularly interesting because it's not just art, but it's a lot of history, and it's sociology, and it is artifacts as well as two-dimensional, three-dimension as well as two-dimension. So I try to give background before we go in.
Mhm. Well, I know I was so the show is I mentioned that we supplemented the Reading exhibition. So Reading, museums, I go into tangents here. So when museums are putting together their exhibition schedule, I often describe it as kind of a jigsaw puzzle. Curating a show takes a lot of time and energy, and you can only really be working on sort of one major scholarly exhibition at a time. You can have another one in the pipeline, but they take a lot of time and energy. So museums do look for traveling exhibitions to help fill out their schedule, particularly smaller museums like ours with, a limited curatorial staff. We couldn't possibly be doing the ambitious schedule of 6 to 8 shows a year that we do if we were doing them all from scratch. That said, nothing comes right out of the box and onto the wall. It's not like a magic thing. A lot of our scholarship goes into tailoring things to our space, and you can see, that the entire installation is customized to our space, and about 1/3 of the objects are from our collection. So we did a lot of supplementing, and that gorgeous kimono is actually ours. And I had taken some detail photos, but I don't think I got them into this PowerPoint. But it is just absolutely breathtaking.
It is beautiful, and it's my understanding that it's a kimono that a man would wear. And I understand perhaps to a wedding or for a wedding. I don't think it's a marital kimono, is it? Is
Right.
it more of a formal
I think it is a
kimono?
formal sort of event kimono, and in fact, an event that would have multiple parts or days, like a wedding feast, because there probably would have been companion kimonos, two more in different colors that would have been part of this sort of wardrobe suite. But it is absolutely gorgeous.
It is, and the colors, and as in all of the art that we're going to see, whether 2 or 3 dimensional, the colors and the figures themselves, in this case, a lot of animals, but all have symbolism. And Japanese art, as I understand it, is fraught with symbolism, including what we're going to see.
Yes, absolutely. So moving on, just a kind of overall exhibition view here. You can see another kimono. They're sort of back to back in the installation. That's the one that came with the exhibition, and a selection of decorative arts that sort of support the themes of the exhibition. So the subtitle of the show, it's called Floating Beauty, Women in the Art of Ukiyo-e, as I said before. And it is, when I talk to people about it, it's like number one, Japanese woodblock prints, right? I think just about everybody loves them. Do you know anybody who doesn't love Japanese woodblock prints?
I don't know who wouldn't love them, but I think even more than liking them, it's understanding, we'll get into it a little bit more, but how they're made. And when you get up close to see how incredibly intricate the work is to get that registration on those prints, it's amazing.
It is, and there is, and we'll talk about the way they're made in a bit, but there is a painterly quality, and I think a variation in the printing that makes them a little bit different than some of the print forms that we know. And in the subject matter, I think the reason why I find these so resonant, and I've used this parallel in a few conversations I've had because it just struck me this time, is that in spite of a lot of the differences, these elaborate hairstyles and kimonos and tea houses, and there's Mount Fuji in the background. So it's kind of a different place, and obviously Japanese art and a lot of Asian art has been exoticized over the years. But remove all that, and you're learning about these people, and you find out as you learn about these prints that they were affordable prints in their time, that they were art sort of for the people, and it reminded me of 17th century Holland, where you have the rise of the merchant class, and then you have the rise of genre painting, things that fit into people's everyday lives, and art that talks about the regular lives of people. And so I found parallels there, and I think that's one of the reasons I love them, is that you see people, there's familiarity in these amidst the difference.
It's also, maybe we should talk here about what period we're talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paula.
Sure, it's called the Edo period, And Edo was the original name for Tokyo. And these works, the Edo or the of Ukiyo-e works during the Edo period came about from the mid 17th century to through the late 17th century to the mid 19th century. And this was a period of time when Japan was under the rule of a rather harsh sultan by the name of Tokugawa. And the Tokugawa period, or the Edo period as it's known, was very, very repressive and very restrictive. And this was a time before Commodore Perry's arrival in the mid 19th century. This was a time when Japan was very isolated and very insulated. And all of this speaks to the kind of art, the subject matter, and so forth, and the growth of the middle class that you were talking about, Sarah, so that the middle classes was affordable art for them, as you said, and there was a strict social order. It was actually based on the Confucian hierarchy, and it went top down from the shogun to and then the feudal lords, and then the samurai, the warriors, and the farmers, the artisans, the merchants, and these made up the middle class, and they needed entertainment. You want to talk about how they got their entertainment?
Sure. In just a minute, I wanted to say one of the interesting things about that hierarchy for me is that the merchant class, the shonen, are the bottom, really. Those folks who are making money are looked down upon and kept very separate, right? And so part of that separation, that class separation, is reflected in their world. Paulette, you were saying earlier that isolationism at home involves, taking these different classes of people and separating them and giving them very different spheres. And so they create ukiyo-e, which we haven't talked about what that means. That ukiyo means floating, right? And ukiyo-e, or floating world, ukiyo-e is pictures of the floating world. And the idea of it is that it's coming from a concept of kind of seizing the pleasures in life,
experiencing from Buddhism.
Right, exactly. And in Buddhism, it had more of a bittersweet sort of ringing of mortality, right? A little bit more about thinking about your mortality in perhaps a more moralizing way, whereas it kind of becomes in this time period a little bit more like you might as well burn the candle at both ends, because you should enjoy yourself while you're here. So the floating world is the world where you can enjoy these earthly, worldly pleasures. And that includes courtesans, and that includes theater. It becomes, the floating world, in spite of being a sort of red light district, it is also the arts district. And so there's theater, and there's the prints happening in that world as well. I've kept this slide on too long, so we'll move on. Although we didn't talk about the color blue, and we did a lot of blue.
Right. I was just going to ask you, so why so much blue, Sarah?
Well, I've heard you talk to people on tours about this. We chose it because the introduction of the pigment Prussian blue in this period creates a lot of change in the way that the artists are working. These beautiful, vivid blue tones in some of the prints, particularly, I think, Hiroshiga, you think of that in Hokusai, some of the very famous printmakers using this Prussian blue. And so also, if you just look at this installation photo and you see, the prints are relatively small scale, and they have sort of creamy colored mats on many of our walls. We put up a blue wallpaper because that just helps the prints pop a little bit more. We wanted to create some.
It's interesting, though, that this color was used for artwork appealing to or marketed to, geared toward a middle class, and in fact even a lower middle class, one could say, when in fact the color blue and other art, as I understand it, and you're the expert on this, was really a more high class, sophisticated color because it was so expensive.
Oh, sure. If you're talking about lapis in
Right.
like Italian Renaissance painting, and that's the Madonna's robe, right? And you see in wealthier cities, you see more and more of that pigment being used for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and well, we'll move on, and these are some images that Paulette picked, and I want to know what grabbed you about these pictures.
I think I was just really showing two devices, if you will, that are used in this art, in addition to the color. Initially, the ukiyo-e were monochromatic, and then gradually colors were added, and we will see some examples of even more elaborate color. But these are examples of going from more monochromatic. We see the enlarged heads by, and I can't remember the artist's name, but he will come up. What's his name?
Since that one's not labeled, I'm going to guess that it's Kunisada, but I am not sure.
Okay, right.
But you
And
see,
that
he was famous for the hairlines, those fine lines around the hairline. So people were imitating him, even if when it wasn't his work.
right. Two other reasons I selected these. Well, actually, three. Activities of daily living. Four. Activities of daily living. The nature with the water and the sky, which is prevalent. The women, well, I guess that's activities of daily living, but the use of perspective. Oh, the triptych and the use of perspective.
Sure.
So the
And
triptych,
it's,
yeah, sorry.
go ahead, talk about triptychs if you want to.
Okay, three. That's it.
So
Three
we're going
panels.
to talk a little bit more. My understanding is that the prints cost, if you did do a sort of, look at the value, I think they cost about the equivalent of about $2.50 in today's money, in their time period. So super, super affordable in the marketplaces. If they did a triptych like this, interestingly, unlike sort of Western art where you might be really careful about purchasing a series or getting a series that was all run at the same time, you might not. You might buy, the first panel of your triptych, and then, 6 months later buy the second panel. And they did not. Usually, the print collectors had their prints in sort of folios and would bring them out to show people, rather than necessarily having them framed or on the wall. So you didn't need to have a whole triptych. It's wonderful to see them. And obviously the artist has designed them as one piece. The wonderful, there's some techniques used in wood block printing. And I first got into this years ago. We did an exhibition in Pittsburgh of the artist Kogyo, who specialized in images of the No Theater. And we had some staff turnover at the time. And I don't know if Amanda Gillen is still on this call. I saw her name on earlier, but she and I had to dive deeply into Japanese prints without a lot of knowledge. And we really wanted to be able to talk about the way the prints were made and the kind of, if you see here the gradation, there's a term called bokashi for creating gradient, and there's all different kinds of bokashi and ways of doing it. But these printmakers are incredibly highly skilled. And I love this. This is a nice choice. The fishing and the wonderful,
And the
wonderful.
fourth or fifth, I've lost count now, reason I selected this, and we'll see another, perhaps even better example of this, or more intricate example of this, is the use of perspective, which isn't something that we typically think of in terms of Japanese work. I think we tend to think of it as being more flat. But the fact that there is so much perspective in so many of these pieces, I found fascinating.
Yeah. It's true. And I think, at a certain point, the trade opens up with the West and there's a little bit more exchange. But I don't think it's fair to say it all comes from Western influence because, that's just not fair. And here, talking a little bit about printmaking and not bad pictures that I managed to find. We do have a block in the show, and the blocks were usually cherry wood. You want something that's going to hold up well, but still not be too hard to carve. And there's a whole selection of tools that the block carvers use. Should say this is a really commercial endeavor. So the artist that you see, this is Hokusai, one of the most famous of the Japanese print artists. And he lived, if you look at those dates, he lived a long, long time and was making art his whole life. He is the artist because he makes the initial design. He makes a drawing, and that drawing then goes to the carvers who use the drawing, make a copy of the drawing and use it, actually, put it on a block of wood so that they can trace the lines and do the carving. It is true that generally every color needs a different block carved. And so the artist would be really involved in working with the carvers and also the printmakers on that to make sure that the right colors are being used in the right place. Sometimes they could combine a couple colors on a block if they were in very discrete spaces. But generally each color needed its own block. And here we're just seeing, a black print from the block on the left. And you can see, I think well enough, when you're printing, things reverse. So here's the figure facing to the right, and here it is in the print facing to the left. It is a very commercial enterprise. So you've got the artist who's the designer, you've got the carver, then you go to the printer. The person who's funding all this to make money is the publisher. So the publisher starts, I think, generally with about 200 impressions. And if those sell, they can make more. And from what I have read, more might have been as many as 6 to 10,000. Maybe 12,000. I watched a video, a commercial dealer was saying, if you imagine that there was 12,000 of these, in 1849 or 1806, whatever year, then maybe half of them have been destroyed. And so then you have 6,000, and maybe half of those, or 2/3 of those even, are in really bad condition. They've been exposed to light, they've faded, they're water damaged, whatever happens to things. The percentage you would have in good condition, even with a pretty large print run, by today is a pretty small number.
One of the things also is when you take a look at these prints, the black and white is, well, here's the carver, and then he puts a piece of paper over it. He makes the black and white print for these outlines, or just inks it in black for the outlines. And there's a fourth person involved in this, at least there was later on in the Ukiyo-e period, or the Edo period, which was the censor, CENSOR.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Right, and that's
whether you wanted him to be or not.
Right, and that's a whole other issue, and there's a lot of politics involved in it, and I suspect there were payoffs and so forth and so on. But when the engraver makes a first print with a piece of paper in order to make that first black and white to make the key block, it's my understanding I'm assuming it's a he, throws away the piece of paper. So I'm
just gonna, I have a good general knowledge of this, but I didn't curate the show and I don't have the depth of knowledge I would have if I had. But I did remember reading specifically that one of our artists actually did time for, because of censorship issues. So Kitagawa Utamaro, who is one of the artists in the show, he was arrested and imprisoned in 1804 for having made illegal prints depicting the samurai and daimyo. So that's the the warriors and the lords,
ruling classes, right?
Yeah, the people in the class above him, and you couldn't depict them, and you could not depict them identifiably either. Like if it was clear that you were depicting a specific person, you could get in trouble. And he was manacled for 50 days, and their publishers were subjected to heavy fines
Oh my
for
goodness.
it.
Sounds like
So,
old
Paulette and I
living.
were talking about this earlier. This is part of the reason landscape starts to become more of a subject
Right,
matter
right.
because
Exactly. There were a set of rules, I can't remember the name of them now, but that were set down uh, to um, to censor. But one of the, also I wanted to point out, and you can actually see it in this carving, in the top right-hand corner here, but in fact in the final print, they're all over. There are blocks that have lettering in them. And very often they are include the censor, but they always have the name of the artist, the printer, and the publisher. I think it's the publisher or the censor that has the circle.
I
Um,
know it's really tough. And I often tell people, people make assumptions, about prints if they know something about Western prints, that they're numbered, 200 of these were made, or that this is marked this way, and it's a whole different ball game here. And also, that kind of sort of regimentation and care in Western printing actually came pretty late too. So if you're looking at, Western prints from the 17th century, you're not going to have the detailed information you have about 19th or 20th century prints. So I've heard, that there are some scholars who have gone really deep into trying to figure out, like, how many of these prints are there really, and track down some of that. But it is, publishing records are not easy, and so that I don't think the publisher is always on the print, and a lot of the actual, I think it's something like only like 50% of the publishers that existed, they feel like they know good information about.
okay.
And there we have, he's using a tool called the Baron, and a book that I love, which I would show you if I thought I had it near me. Oh, it's right here. This book that I love by Rebecca Salter, Japanese Woodblock Printing, actually has detailed instructions for how to make one. It's really written for artists who might want to, understand and explore Japanese printmaking, but maybe use similar techniques on their own. So you've got, like, I think it's bamboo leaves that are twined up and made into a sort of rope that's then coiled and wrapped in fabric. And apparently, this, he looks like he's working pretty hard, but it's a pretty efficient tool for sort of transferring the weight into down the arm from the shoulder, and allowing for nice even pressure as they are placing the paper on the inked
As long
block.
as we're talking about books, my little Bible for this.
I'll have to get a copy of that too, Paulette.
Okay. Ukiyo-e, The Floating World and Beyond by Josie Matsuda. Brief, comprehensive.
Yeah. I said mine, the Rebecca Salter book is a fairly fast read too. I read it while waiting for jury duty. So sitting there in the courtroom, uh, and I selected this. This is a great piece, and I did not, I believe it's Hiroshige. I did not caption it. So there will be a few of these in here uncaptioned, and my apologies for that, but I think I did manage to get captions on most of them. It is a really, really wonderful print because of the use of perspective, and a kind of composition that I think we associate with photography, these kinds of, cutting off things in the frame, and sort of feeling more like the perspective of a person, like you're almost looking through a viewfinder there. But I put this detail in there because you can see the wood grain. So that's why it is here in the little chunk of slides we had on technique, because it is fun. And sometimes that is used as a technique. The block could be soaked in water, which would make the wood grain sort of swell up and become more obvious. And then you would get that as a decorative patterning in the print, deliberate, and it would wear down. So earlier impressions, would show that more than later impressions. Kind of fun to
Speaking
see.
of the technique, you can look at any of these, but I was particularly looking at the sunset on the previous one, and to get those trees in front of the sunset and to have them lined up that way, that's no small feat. Also, the details of the buildings, if you look very closely, and Sarah knows that on my tours I advocate getting as close to a piece of
And I'm fine with that as long as they're glazed, if it's behind glass, go ahead.
I always say, get as close as you can without the guard or the alarm stopping you. But the detail, the lines on that are really phenomenal. So as far back in any of these that you go, or as close up as you get, you see incredible detail.
And a lot of that bokashi that I was talking about, the use of gradation in the prints, really, really beautiful. And then we have some other images, and sorry, this is a little bit fuzzy. I particularly loved this. We've been talking a lot about the time period, sort of the structure, the social structure of Japan. But this is really supposed to be an exhibition that, has all of that Japanese woodblock world in it, but really focuses on the lives of women. And here you see a woman with her child sleeping on her lap, and she's reading a book, and her companion is decorating a lantern. Sorry, I need to have a little bit of my water, I guess.
Well, while you take your water, we could also mention here that one of the main subject matters of this is from the entertainment center in Edo, or the red light district, you might call it,
There we
Yoshiwara.
go.
Am I pronouncing it correctly? And
Yoshiwara, and I just put up a map of
oh,
it.
good, right, right. And each of the major cities had this cultural center that indeed was the red light district, but was more than that. And the pictures of the women you're seeing are mostly Bijinga. They're not Bijinga. The art is of these women is known as Bijinga, and they're mostly courtesans, and they lived in a situation where they were basically in servitude, but they had a very strict hierarchy within that their community as well.
So you're reminding me of something that I wanted to mention, and I keep saying we have a saying in the museum world: don't talk about what's not there. But I'm going to. We all have. That's why we say it, because it's hard to resist. So the woodblock prints themselves in Japanese are called nishikie, which actually means brocade pictures. And it's because, when they first began using color, as you mentioned earlier, Paula, it was a very limited palette. And it was softer colors, and it was reminiscent of brocade fabrics. And I had meant to throw a slide in about, just showing some brocade next to one of the early pictures to highlight that. But and so there are these different genres within. So the bijinga are the beauty prints, and oftentimes you'll see on a label that it'll call a woodblock print nishikie, because that's the Japanese term for it. Yeah, and so here we have the Yoshiwara, the pleasure district, is an isolated area. Like, do all that stuff over there. We want to keep you happy, but we don't want you mixing with us. So there actually is a gate into the Yoshiwara. This main sort of avenue is lined with cherry trees, or some kind of blossoming trees, maybe plum trees. Just don't want to make assumptions. And you can kind of see the organized layout, but it was all sequestered. And we have some other images. This is that main I'm covered up here. That main, so it is cherry trees. I got that from somewhere. Cherry blossom time in Nakanocho of the Yoshiwara, and that's by Hiroshiga. And so that place that we just saw here is being.
And if you could stay on the city plan, on the town plan, can you go back
Sure.
to that one for a second?
Whoa, I'm going the wrong direction.
There you go. I just want to point out one thing. One is the writing that you see on the top right and the lower right and the lower left and then the upper left. So my guess is that I don't see the circle, so maybe there wasn't a censor on this one because it was a map. I guess maybe the censor just said, fine, don't bother me. But what I really wanted to point out was in the background, Mount Fuji. And Mount Fuji is dominant in a whole lot of Japanese art, except for one in particular that we'll see later.
Okay. Yeah, and you can have fun. One of the things I've said about this show is, you can have fun going through and just finding Mount Fuji, or looking for all the different kinds of birds, or musical instruments or food. It is really fun. We don't have a lot of prints showing food, but we have a few. And so, are those dumplings? Is that tofu? I find that
And
fascinating.
fashion. Take a look at the women in the foreground here on the right. They may be courtesans, but within the ranks of courtesans, there, as we mentioned before, there is a hierarchy, and they actually were the fashion icons. They may have indeed been prostitutes. They were in servitude. Some of the highest ranking ones were very well educated and well trained, and I don't know, well educated is the right word, but very
Educated in certain areas, right? They needed to be
exactly,
able to have,
exactly.
conversational skills. They needed to be able to play certain games, musical instruments.
Right.
Um,
And they had to be able to have good conversations. They had to be able to talk to their male customers.
and it's so fascinating. And one of the things I read that I don't have in front of me, but the structure of their day. So, they were entertaining in the evening, and then they would sleep for maybe 4 or 5 hours, maybe from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. they would sleep, but then they would have to get up before whoever they had spent the night with, and have themselves all ready in their regalia again. And they'd go through a sort of morning thing, and then the person would leave and they'd get a little more sleep. So a very structured existence. And they also had these promenades, which may in fact be what we're seeing here, where the sort of top, what did we read earlier today when we were talking, Paulette?
right.
800 regular courtesans to the one that would ascend to
Exactly.
this incredibly lofty position. But she also was an indentured servant. So as you rise up, your lifestyle becomes more and more luxurious, and you are held responsible for those costs. You can never get yourself out of it. I mean, maybe one of your clients who's very wealthy cares enough to try and purchase you out, but that didn't happen very often. And I think most young women were dead by 21, 22 years old. For whether it was venereal disease or issues related to pregnancy, or trying to terminate pregnancies. It was not a good life. And perhaps a certain amount of luxury for some of them. I mean, the girls would actually get sold, often by their parents, sold to the brothel. So we may in
The
fact be
whole,
seeing one of those promenades here.
yeah, the whole society at the time, though, was very sexist. And in fact, one of the things I learned is that women had their own alphabet that they
Yes.
were only allowed to read.
Yes,
Um,
you learned to, you could read and write, but it was a separate, like less
right. It
prestigious.
didn't deal with politics or finance or business or trade. It dealt with matters of home. I guess it would be, tantamount to us being able to just read recipes or something, or directions
And,
on a pattern.
and I'm sorry, I don't know why this print formatted that way. A couple of these don't seem to have formatted correctly, and I
So
missed that.
I love this one that you selected, Sarah.
It is it is actually a painting. It is not a wood block print. It is not in the show, but it is a wonderful illustration of the Yoshiwara. And in fact, I watched a movie, a Japanese film called Sakuran. I'll talk about it a little more later, maybe. Interesting film. I mean, it visually tries to capture, I think, the vividness and graphic quality of the prints of this period. And there are many scenes like this where you see the sort of grating, or the bars that separate the women in the brothel from the men who are on the outside looking in, and as spectators trying to choose or trying to gain access. And these hairstyles, this is one of my favorite things. And if you're interested, let me know. I'll share a link, or but the Art Institute of Chicago did a video, I think it's about 15 minutes long, in which they recreate the hairstyles that you see in Japanese prints. And it's pretty fascinating, using like horsehair sort of hair pieces to sort of fill in and create volume with it's just, and all
And
sorts of grease and
and other things also have symbolism or intricacies. The obi, I learned, it depends how the obi is tied, how long it is, where it's tied, where
Mhm.
it's knotted, and so forth, all have symbolism as well.
There might be a
Big
slide in
fish.
here with a really prominently tied obi. The idea was that upper class women tied their obi in back because someone was dressing them, and lower class women needed to be able to, dress themselves, and courtesans needed to be able to remove their clothes easily. So they tied in front. But very strangely, because of these sort of the allure and the appeal of the fashion of the Yoshiwara and the courtesans in the Yoshiwara and these processions, which even regular folks would go in to watch, these parades of the beautiful women, they start tying their kimonos in front too. So
We had a guest on Community Day at the museum, a girl, actually, a young girl, who was wearing a kimono, and she explained that how she folded the front was also symbolic. If it were one way, it was for a funeral, and if it were another, it was not for a funeral.
oh.
Uh,
and And I know
it,
the eyebrows, right?
oh,
Yeah,
right.
married women shaved their eyebrows and drew them on in a sort of different place on their face, if I'm remembering that correctly.
I don't know about eyebrows.
Yeah. So I put this in here. We do have, as I showed in the installation photos, some objects that sort of fill out the story. And this is kind of fun because that's a pair of geita. These are pretty rudimentary geita, the high-heeled sandals, the platform sandals, which evolved actually from the idea of walking, in rice paddies, an agricultural thing, and then in the city, keeping your, voluminous kimono out of the mud, gaining like 6, 8, 4, however many extra inches, depending on your geita, to keep your hem from trailing in the dirt. And we'll see some more of those. And then the little pipe there, that's another thing. You can go through the show and look for Mount Fuji. You can go through the show and look for the women who are smoking the little pipes. Very fashionable. And here I pulled some photos off the internet of women in, so those, I said those are like kind of working class geita that we were just looking at. These are kind of what the courtesans would have been wearing.
High
Very,
five, high
very
heels were bad.
yeah, very, very elaborate. And the walking was really ritualistic. You would kind of sweep your foot to the side. There are some videos online you can find of that, but the bare feet is also that's erotic. So the courtesan going through the Yoshiwara, the main street of the Yoshiwara, doing her promenade, this little hint of barefoot was a titillating thing. Moving on from that, and that's not a great image here, but this is actually meant to convey the sense, whoops, I'm trying to move so I can see the bottom of this print. So she's in very high geita there, and she's kind of leaning on a tree. So when they walked in these, so this is meant to be a courtesan who is in full regalia under a cherry tree. Look at all the hair ornaments, my lord. And she's kind of supporting herself, and they would have the help of male attendants. They also had younger women who were sort of in training who waited on them, because it was so difficult to walk in these. And apparently if you fell, which of course it would be embarrassing for anyone, but you had to go to the nearest tea house where they would replace your clothing and tend to you, but then you had to pay them for helping you. If you, and I don't know what happened to your career as a courtesan after that.
I want to talk just for a second, if I may, about Utagawa Kunisada, just about the name, because you see it also says Toyokami, Wait, maybe I should put my glasses
In
on.
parentheses, yeah, Toyokuni
Okay,
III.
Toyokuni the third. So Utagawa, there are actually three that who are represented in the show. Utagawa is actually the name of the school of art, and there were three of them who were also known as Toyokuni the first, the second, and the third.
And I will say Kunisada is, I think, kind of the godfather of beauty prints, and really known for popularizing the genre. He had like I was talking earlier, I think about Hokusai and his long career. Kunisada had a long career and worked from a young age and was responsible for thousands of designs. And he is one of the major artists represented in the exhibition. I believe he is the one who was the son. His family had a ferry boat business, so there was steady income. So often people who have the opportunity to pursue art are people who already have financial stability, right?
You mean like William Singer Jr.?
Yeah, absolutely. Our museum founder who inherited $4 million as a young man, which allowed him to do what he wanted. Um, and then here we have another one. This is a Aayou, which is a high-level courtesan, not as high as the Oiran, but still at the top of her field. And in this, she's being kind of playful. She's got one of those little, I think they're kyorastus, the pipes, and she's poking it through the fence. We don't know who she's poking, what she's poking, but it is it is a kind of visual pun based on a piece of theater that is being represented in that little fan-shaped vignette above her head. But you can see, the appeal of these prints, the incredible design aspects, the color, the patterning, just so beautiful.
Since we're coming up to close to 10 of 7, I think, and you mentioned theater, Kabuki theater was part of this district in this genre, as well as literature, Tales of Genji.
Mhm.
So in case we
I'll
don't get
move
to that.
forward through some slides pretty fast here. This one is
Okay.
fun because these women are, dressed in extreme fashion and looking at pictures of woodblock pictures of fashion. Stuck that there. Some of these like everyday life images I popped on in. She's threading a needle. These women are, this is very sort of female coded stuff, right? They're hanging out, arranging flowers and plants.
Do we
Oh, and the
know if
one on
these
top,
women,
this I love. This is like, I guess as erotic as you could be without upsetting the censors. So he's dreaming, he's got a book on his shoulder, he's fallen asleep and he's dreaming of these beautiful women who are courtesans. And then we have kids playing ball. And another, I love this one, so stylized. It is a peddler of potted plants of the 4 seasons. So surrounded by flowers, and
do
and
we
here's
know if
the tale
these
of Genji.
women, Sarah, one of the questions I got from a visitor was, did these women pose for the artists?
No, I think rarely, generally no would be my answer from what I know about it. These are generalized depictions, perhaps sometimes inspired by specific people. And we also know that in the houses, in the brothels, if you had a legendary Orion, and I might have showed a picture already of Sagawa, the name continued. So, there could be generations of women using the same name, because they're essentially filling the role that person had. So yeah, I think they are idealized images, sometimes based on real people, but rarely actually, like somebody's not sitting for a portrait in the
So
Western.
it's not Degas sitting in the rehearsal halls.
Although, they had, I'm sure, these artists, Kunisada, Hokusai, they're going, they have to be able to see and feel the Yoshiwara to express it.
that a pun?
And so there we are with the Tale of Genji, if you wanted to say a little bit about.
This apparently was the first published novel
That's what they say, and it was written by a
by
woman.
a woman
Yeah.
who wrote at night. This is about the year 1000 CE, isn't it?
It's a
1010?
long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's a complicated, long story. I
He
found
was
a blog
he
online
was
where
just a
people,
cad. He just
yes,
ran around.
exactly. It's basically about his sexual adventures.
Absolutely.
Um, and uh, and there are an online blog I found where contemporary people were, sort of reading it together and posting their comments on the Tale of Genji. But it shows up in everything: porcelain decoration, woodblock prints, reinterpretations of it, or people, contemporary people, sort of acting out scenes from the Tale of Genji. And that's, again, it's another, like the Binga, the beauty prints. There are the Genjia, which are like the prints that are inspired specifically from the Tale of Genji. So we
And
do have a copy of it.
the exhibit has several of them. It's not just this. There are several interpretations or stories that come from it.
Yeah. And here's this is one of your favorites, I know, Paulette.
It is.
And it is in here. It is really meant to be in the everyday life section. Somehow crept in past Genji in my PowerPoint, but
Okay, so I have to quickly just talk about the one on the left. Okay,
it,
why
it, it, there are
it's called
details.
something of a fair or something, which has nothing to do with it. But if you take a look at it, basically what you see is a woman reclining. She has a baby kind of on her knee, and up in the upper right there is a temple, some kind of religious setting. Okay, we know that she is holding a fan that or at least she's not holding it. It's resting in front of her, a little bit to the left. A fan that is a cosmetics ad. So I have told and understood this, I had read, that this was meant to be humorous. In other words, if you pray enough and you use the right makeup, you too can be fertile. All right. But another
And it is specifically a shrine to
Oh,
fertility.
that's right, to the goddess of fertility, right?
Yeah.
But there's an aspect to this that escaped me, and Sarah filled me in on it.
Sure. Well, she's got, and here's the detail, her hand under her skirt here has something wadded up in it. And it actually is something that you can find in a number of the prints that have to do with life in the Yoshiwara. And it is contraceptive. I think I read like bamboo derived tissues that would be used as like a contraceptive sponge. Getting pregnant if you were a woman, a courtesan in the Yoshiwara, was not a good thing. And so that was a part of their lives. And so the thing with this print is, the humor that between the mirror and the shrine to fertility makes you think maybe she wants a baby. She's got one on her knee. Her facial expression doesn't look terribly happy.
It's maternal, no.
Yes. So maybe she doesn't want another baby. It's hard to know. Like, is she
Did it not work and she's
right?
upset?
Yes, or is she like thinking her husband or her partner, maybe she's not a courtesan, maybe her partner wants another child and she doesn't, and she's trying to use subterfuge. I don't know. I actually did a Google Lens search with this image to see if I could find any more about it, but literally I found it in one other museum collection. Minneapolis has it in their online inventory, but they didn't have any interpretation. But she's got an open kimono there. I think that's her obi
And
leg.
and you know that obi on the floor has to mean something.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what,
But it's fascinating. This is a beautiful one as we see landscape sort of emerging as a more major theme here. And we've got Mount Fuji, and we've got these school children. Girls could go to school, but they were far outnumbered by boys, I think more than 2 to 1. Sometimes in urban centers, there were female teachers. Here they are going to see the cherry blossoms, which are part of this whole floating world thing, right? The transitory nature and beauty of cherry blossoms, it's such a part of the Japanese aesthetic, and it is part of this appreciation for the floating world, the things, the ephemeral things that pass. And this is going to see the cherry blossoms at Asuka Hill, which is one of the first places that was deliberately planted with cherry trees in order to create an event space for people to come to. And here are these school children going
And
there.
is that Mount Fuji in the background?
That is indeed Mount Fuji in the background.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So we're very close to 7. I'm happy if if anybody has any questions, they can put them in the chat. They can raise their hands if they want to. I'm kind of keeping an eye on things. This is another one, a little bit out of order here, of courtesans. There are just so many fun details. I mean, a lot of the times these work like Western genre paintings. You're seeing the way people went about their lives. And so, these women are gathered, they are in the Yoshiwara, they are courtesans, but they're hanging out together, smoking and having some tea and relaxing. And then this is the one I was mentioning earlier, where it is Segawa, who is they're from the series 36 Famous and Fine Courtesans. So there is celebrity when you reach the height of your profession for the women in the Yoshiwara. And this is showing also, right? She's looking like a scholar. She's not looking like a prostitute. And quickly go through some others. This is in the actor section. It is the story of Aayou Oshichi, who was a teenage girl who committed arson. And she did that in order to spend more time with her lover. And I'm looking around here for the calendar because we have a talk just about this. She's a real woman who lived, several hundred years before this print was made. And in the Edo period, she becomes a kind of folk hero. When she is arrested for the arson, the age for being a minor is 15. The age for being tried as an adult is 16. And the judge tries to get her off by saying, "You're not 16, right?" And she either is very self-righteous or she doesn't get it, and she's like, yeah, and several times she says, yeah, I'm 16, and she ends up being executed. I think she's burned at the stake. So arson and flame being a big part of this story. But we have Kit Brooks, who is the curator of Asian art at the Princeton Art Museum, and she was at the National Museum of Asian Art in DC before that. If you've seen the show about supernatural in Japanese prints, that is one of her projects. Anyway, she is going to talk to us in December. I can't find my calendar here to know the exact date, but all about this character and her legacy in sort of popular culture in Japan, which should be a really good event.
So keep in mind, oh, I love this one because of the colors, but keep in mind that there were no women in kabuki theater.
That's right. So that is an onigata, a male actor. So in that portrayal of the teenage arsonist, we are seeing a male actor. Yeah.
And see the circle? I think the censor saw that one.
Okay. Sorry. Going to.
No, it's fine.
And yes, and this is, and we're in the little section where I didn't get all the captions in here, but this is an amazing print. It is really amazing. Kabuki actor. And this one is from our collection at the Washington County Museum of Fine Arts. And it is actors, and I believe they're actually sort of advertising a restaurant in here. But the background, this black and white check, I was sure had to mean something. All I could find out about it was that it was indeed associated with a particular kabuki actor, but none of the ones that are in this print. So it may have just been very popular textile design that they've incorporated into the prints. Just going through some more things really quickly. We're coming up on 7 o'clock. Last call for questions from anybody as we go through. This is one of my favorites. It is a panel of a triptych. So we're seeing the right panel. There would have been two other prints here. And it corresponds to what you're seeing through the screen. So you can see her hair ornaments there in the shadow. And I just think what an incredibly complicated task the artist set out for himself doing this. And they're actually playing a game that is akin to rock, paper, scissors. So hence all the sort of gesturing going on in the shadows. I love that piece. And this is another one of my favorites. This is a Hiroshiga, there we have Mount Fuji, and beautiful use of gradation going on in the colors, and women doing their laundry. So this relates to our daily life, as well as the introduction of the landscape genre. And fellas over here looking for clams or fishing, both. It's another piece, beautiful piece with Mount Fuji in the background. I threw in a bunch with Mount Fuji in the background, just for fun here. And there is.
Okay, now, the point that I was trying to make before is that Mount Fuji is prominent in every one of the pieces, except for this one. And I love this because this shows that the tsunami wave far not exceeds, but far outsizes even Mount Fuji.
And I think it is actually, I mean, it's obviously, it's like an iconic image, probably most people on the planet, that's an exaggeration, but know this image. And, there's amazing technical things going on here in the fact that the wave feels almost animated with these tendrils coming out, and the way they have created this spray throughout the image. But I actually think it's, there's a little bit of a pun going on here, because you might not even you might think that's another white cap, right? But it's Mount Fuji. So the artist is having a really good time.
And this is he did a series of these, didn't he?
Yes. So this comes from, I think it's 36 Views of Mount Fuji. I meant to check the exact title and didn't have a chance. This is what happens when the director's doing things and has 6 meetings a day. Yeah, it's and they say that this is an earlier impression based on the coloration. So you'll see different impressions of the wave, and the boats are kind of peachy colored, and they've done some different things with the color. But this is beautiful, and it is.
Now I see 3 boats.
Yeah, let me go back. So I think this is one boat going all, with the wave in front of it. And this is enough.
Oh, okay. It's a long boat.
Yeah.
I guess that's why they're called long boats. Okay, got it.
I think so.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go on. And this I know is the final slide. And this is a triptych, and I have the full triptych here, but we only have the right panel, which also has Mount Fuji in it. But there's just so much to see in this exhibition. I mean, the social stories are fascinating. I actually do have a couple other slides that take us into that a little bit. So we know the influence, and we're doing pretty good on time. We might run a few minutes over, but not much. So that when trade opens up in Paulette, because you've been giving tours, is it 1867? When does trade open up? Do you know, to Japan?
Oh, when trade opens up?
Yeah.
Well, I think Commodore Perry was there in 1853.
Okay, so
it's in the latter part of the night of
So the way I understand it is that these Japanese prints are so common, they are everywhere in Japan, that they basically are using them as packing material for things that are being shipped to Europe. And so the Europeans are opening crates of imported items from Japan and finding these prints and falling in love with them. And many European artists become deeply influenced by Japanese prints. Van Gogh, Gauguin. Here we have Claude Monet in his dining room with his collection of Japanese prints behind him. And if you are watching Emily in Paris, which I'll say, the clothes are just wild. I watch just for the crazy outfits she wears. But there's a scene where she goes to Giverny and she's inside the house, and you can see Japanese prints on the wall behind her. So
apparently Paul Gauguin and his home in the Fijis was so enamored of ukiyo-e that there were 48 prints that were found in his house.
Yeah, and there's quite a few here in Monet's dining room. And then we were talking about how current trends, anime, films, and manga are very much influenced by woodblock prints. And I thought I'd give a commercial for a movie from 2006 here, which is called Sakuran, and it is the story of a courtesan. So it's not super sexy. I don't think it's offensively sexy, but if you're really sensitive to female nudity, there's not much male nudity. What else is new in the world of cinema? But it might not be for you.
Art.
Yes, exactly, the male gaze. But you can see this is the cover of the manga of Sakuran, which means deranged. Sakura are the cherry blossoms, and Sakuran apparently means deranged. Sorry, I've been talking a lot and my throat's getting dry. But that's the cover of the manga. It was a very popular manga. It's the story of a girl who's sold into service in the Yoshiwara. There are depictions of the Yoshiwara, and in the film, and here's the sort of IMDb sort of cover image for the film, they're clearly trying to pull the manga style and the colors and crazy, vivid, crazy colors in the movie. It was kind of fun because a lot of what we have learned through this show is depicted, and they even have her when she rises to the top and she does her procession, and becomes very famous. There's a scene where there are prints of her being sold in the marketplace, and people are like running to the stall to grab, the print of her because she's so popular. So that is the end of the slideshow. I stopped my screen share. I don't think we had any questions. Quiet group out there, but there were people out there. So I thank you all who were with us. Yes, and I will say that we have done a number of programs related to this exhibition. We still have an Ikebana program. Check wcmfa.org to see about that. Oh, I did find my calendar here. I just saw we had a calligraphy class and that already happened. On November 8th, we have a Japanese guitarist, Hiroya Tsukamoto. He has played at the museum a couple of times before, but he is going to come in and respond to the exhibition with his music. The Ikebana demonstration is November 17th. We have Kit Brooks coming, who I mentioned before, the curator of Asian art at Princeton, doing the next Let's Talk Art, which is December 12th at 6 o'clock. And she will be talking about Burning with Desire, depictions of Yayoi Oshichi. And then there's a relief printmaking workshop in January. So there's a lot of ways to engage with the exhibition. I thank everybody for being here. Paula, I thank you so, so much. I knew it would be no problem filling an hour of chatting with you.
Very true. It was a pleasure, and I'm so glad I was able to be here for it. I love the exhibit. I hope everybody who hasn't seen it comes to see it, and if you've seen it, come again, because now you have some more information.
Right. Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.